And on the little intercom, you heard a little boop, boop, code 0. I just thought, looked around, nobody's doing anything. What's a code 0? You know where my mind went is I'm like, I hear of Dollar Trees getting robbed all the time. Are we being robbed right now? But I'm like, I guess everyone else is still shopping and nobody's concerned. And then again, code 0. At this point, I'm like, okay, maybe nobody else cares, but I'm getting a little worried about this code 0. Third time, and I duck and run and cover. I don't. I'm just like everybody else. I have no idea. Does anyone know what code 0 is? A Dollar Tree? Why does Dollar Tree need to do codes? What is going on? Maybe we were being robbed, and it's a normal day here. Who knows? Well, in the hospital, maybe you might know code blue. Do you know what that means? Not? What does code blue mean?
Cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest. Yeah, that's right. So a heart has stopped. So a doctor may be telling a story, and they'll give the kind of medical jargon. They'll talk about that a code blue was signaled. But if you're the loved one, you're going to tell a different story. You're going to talk about how scary it was and how relieved you were when your loved one was brought back. Two different, sometimes events are so powerful that they require multiple stories to tell of what's happening. And I believe that's true for the story of our redemption. Is our redemption requires multiple stories to fully appreciate. And so we're going to look at the different portraits the Bible paints of redemption. And we're going to look at them from different angles because they're not going to really seem like they're supposed to be telling the same story, and yet they are. Last week we talked about the main story. The keynote story is the story of the Exodus, which is actually two stories. We talked about how the Exodus, there's two redemptions happening. There's a liberation redemption, where Israel is broken into by God, trashed the place with the plagues, and he captures them and takes them back. And we talked about how that shows a dimension of our redemption where we can be rescued from someone who doesn't have the right to own us. So it's a reflection of any kind of rescue. So even when we talk about not being persecuted, under persecution, the freedoms we have, the lack of oppression we might enjoy, that's a kind of redemption. Israel was redeemed from real physical slavery. And I believe that when we're set free, any kind of act of justice in our world is a reflection, is another mirror of God's redemption. But then there's another one, the Passover, which is this whole riddle of why does a lamb have to die? Why the blood on the door? We talked about how we are enslaved not just to pharaohs in the world, but we're enslaved to death. The only difference is death actually has a rightful claim over us. So God does not pay Pharaoh for the slaves, but he does pay death. God makes a payment. In fact, we didn't talk about this last week, but there's even this ritual God tells the people to do in the next chapter. So chapter, I believe it's Exodus 12 that talks about the Passover. Exodus 13 says, now for your firstborn, pay this redemption price. And so here's the logic of it, is God pays death for the Israelites, or anyone. Maybe there were Egyptians, I'm sure, Egyptians who painted the blood on the door, but mostly Israelites. God's paying death because death has a rightful claim over people, just like death had a rightful claim over you. But then, in chapter 13, the families are told to pay God back so that they can take their firstborn back into their family. Like there's something real there. It's a mystery to me. It's a different culture, different rituals, different norms, but there is a message being said about our redemption story there. That we were really bought with a price when Jesus died on the cross. In one sense, we sing about it. I think this is true. In one sense, the wrath of God is being satisfied, but that's not the only way we're supposed to look at it. We're supposed to see it as death has been paid off on our behalf. Death had a rightful claim over us. Because of our sin, we owe death. We were living on borrowed time, might be a way of seeing it. So we're going to talk about 3 other portraits. So this is no slides today. I'm going to ask you guys to open up your Bibles. The first one we're going to talk about is in Ruth. So if you're familiar with the story of Ruth, very popular story, amazing story. Ruth sacrifices so much. If you remember, Naomi is her mother-in-law. Naomi goes to Moab, and she has 2 sons. They get married to Moabite women, Ruth being one of them. Well, the sons die, the father dies. She sends the other daughter-in-law away, says, I can't do anything for you. And then there's the famous line, Ruth says, do not send me away. Where you go, I go. Your God will be my God. This just incredible act of loyal love for her mother-in-law. To step into the unknown, to step into, basically to step into poverty and need and possible, horrible, homelessness, starvation, she's stepping into. Well, they return to Israel, and they meet this guy Boaz, as a matter of fact. And Naomi says, you've got to do this funny little ritual to sort of offer a proposal. And Boaz has heard about Ruth and is so impressed with Ruth. Immediately he loves her, and he wants to marry her. But he knows that there's a way things are to be done. And Boaz knows that culturally what he's got to do is he's got to give the offer to the next in line. So there's this whole, again, we're talking about Israelite culture here, and this is just different than what we do. But in that day, it was by the clan, and you looked out for relatives. And so there are some parts of the law of, the Torah that talk about, if you have a relative or a brother who can't afford their land anymore, you buy it for him. If you have a brother who dies, well, you take care of his family. And so what you're doing there is there's a responsibility. We have a responsibility to one another, and we have a responsibility to family. In particular, it's to take when there's a financial need, but then there's also this concern about lineage. And there's something about so if your brother dies and you're a man or a man, you marry his widow, and then the kids you have are they're your brother's kids. They're not your kids. They take his last name. They don't take your last name, sort of thing. You in that sense, you almost, I think it's like a way of resurrecting your brother, in a sense. So this is the weird world we're stepping into. Well, Boaz needs to give the opportunity to the next in line before he's given the right to marry Ruth. So here's what he does. So this is Ruth chapter 4, verse 1. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there than the next of kin, the one who has the right to marry Ruth and take the land that she can't afford, the next of kin whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over here, friend. Sit down here." A lot of our translations say friend. In the Hebrew, that's like an unidentified person. So Mr. So-and-so. Or if you're a cop and you see a dead body and you don't know, you call it what? A John Doe. It's this. So he says, Mr. So-and-so. It's a weird thing to say. Hello, unidentified person. Come here, sit down. And he went over and he sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men. Oh, how convenient. The elders are here too. 10 members of the elders of the city and said, hey, how about you guys? Sit down. So they sat down. You see, this is humor. This is funny. Like it just so happened to be. Oh, look, he bumps into so-and-so. Oh, while the elders are here, let's just hang out a bit. Here's what he says. Verse 3. He then said to the next of kin, we don't know his name. We don't get his name. Next of kin, which the next of kin is the kinsman redeemer. So this is how we follow this along in our word study of redemption. This is the redeemer. So this is the one who has the right to redeem. Whatever redemption looks like. In this case, it means buying land and it means taking a wife. He says, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it, in the presence of those sitting here, in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. Redeeming. So what does the word redeem mean in this context? It means buying land. But if you will not, tell me, so that I may know. For there is no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you. He's being slick here. Boaz knows what he's doing. He's saying, I've got a great opportunity for you. What this amazing financial windfall has just dropped in your lap. I need to know if you're interested in this, because if you're not, then I have right to buy this land. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire, he says, I'll redeem it. That's how he ended. He says, great, what a cool thing. Cool, I can build up my portfolio. I can have a bigger inheritance for my kids. This is awesome. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you are also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance. Okay? He leaves out that detail. He says, okay, now that you've agreed to buy the land, let me just tell you, it's a bundle package. Not the way we would talk about marriage, but you acquire Ruth along with the land. At this, the next of kin said, I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. What do we learn about this story? Well, if it were just the land, it would be a plus. It would be increasing his portfolio. It would be a financial win. But the responsibility isn't just to the land. It's not an opportunity for just land. There are people now, Naomi and Ruth, who need to be taken care of. And so here's what would happen, is if Mr. So-and-so took the land, he would have to marry Ruth. And if he married Ruth, then his children with Ruth would not be his children. They would be Elimelech's children. Which would mean that whatever children Mr. So-and-so already has, their inheritance is getting split up. His whole portfolio is now getting divided between two families. This is no longer a win. This is a cost. This is in the red, not the black kind of thing. So he saw it as a great transactional action. And Boaz, cleverly, he frames it that way. He gives him this, look at this great opportunity. Hey, also, by the way, it's not really a good opportunity. Boaz frames it like that, so that, and he gets the elders together, so that he puts the pressure on Mr. So-and-so, so that Boaz can jump to the offer. Think about what this is saying about Jesus. Boaz is a redeemer, a kinsman redeemer. How does Jesus look at us? Does he look at us for what we can offer him? Does God get anything out of the deal? And yet, he loves us. And yet he cherishes us. And yet he's like Boaz, and he's like, I'm gonna arrange the scenario, and I'm gonna do what I can to make sure that I can welcome you into my family. This is the love of God. This is the portrait of a Redeemer. It's beautiful. It's so cool. The irony here is Mr. So-and-so. He was worried about his inheritance. He was worried about his lineage. He was worried about his legacy. He was worried about the continuation of his name. And all throughout history, we know about Ruth. We know about Boaz. Their names are written out in the lineage of Jesus himself. Their lineage could not be any better, any more valuable, any more elite than it is. And why? Because they were willing to lay down their lineage. But Mr. So-and-so, we don't know his name. His name's been blotted out. It's what Jesus said. You want to gain your life, you've got to be willing to lose your life. If you're willing to hand over your life, you gain it. If you're willing to hand over your rights, you gain it. If you're willing to sacrifice to Jesus, you get way much more in return. Okay, the next one is going to feel like it has nothing to do with this. But it also uses the word redemption. So turn to Numbers 35. So Ruth was a story about a widow. Numbers 35, this is the law. This is the Torah. So this isn't written like a story. So we're going to go to Numbers 35, verse 9. And we're going to read through a whole bunch. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan," so this is the situation. They're not in the promised land yet. "Then you shall select cities to be cities of refuge for you, so that a slayer, everybody say a slayer. So the slayer who kills a person without intent may flee there." This is a manslayer. We call him a slayer because we don't know if he's a murderer yet, but at least he killed somebody. "The city shall be for you a refuge from the avenger." Everybody say avenger. Oh, coming out this December. We'll all be there. I'll get the tickets. Don't worry. Avengers. "So that the slayer may not die until there is a trial before the congregation." Okay? We got it. We're back in ancient Israelite culture where they don't have police officers. They don't have state courts. They don't have state-sanctioned prosecutors and defense attorneys. What do they have? They have cities of refuge. So if you kill somebody by accident, you now have an avenger going after you. In the Hebrew, the word is a blood redeemer. There's the redeemer. So God sets it up. He says, here are 6 cities scattered about you will flee to until you're going to be able to have trial. And, if at the trial they decide you're guilty, well then, life for life. Your death penalty. If you're innocent, here's what happens. You do not get to go back home. You're stuck in the city of refuge until a particular day, until the high priest dies. So this is the main priest of the whole country. Once he dies, you can go back home. It's a weird world, isn't it? It's a strange system. Like, what in the world does that have to do with anything? So here we go. We've got the Avenger and the Slayer. The Avenger is the blood redeemer. I feel like Avenger, that's the superhero. Blood redeemer, that's like the horror villain there. But this is not a bad guy. The Avenger, the blood redeemer, that's a good person. That's someone, so in a particular clan, you're going to be assigned. You will be Richard, you are the avenger of our community. And if anybody kills somebody, their blood is polluting our town, our community. And it's up to Richard to bring stability, to cleanse our land. That's the image there. And so Richard's like, okay, I better go find the guy. But then these cities of refuge are meant so that Richard just doesn't go whack the guy. that there's a system in place to prevent unnecessary loss of life. But it's still not a great system. Like, it's as good a system as it could be because life is valuable and precious and priceless. So if a life is taken, then yeah, how do you value that life? Well, you take the other life. But the problem is, you just took 2 lives. Like, that's no good. So what if the system? What if we had someone who was willing to actually lay down their life on behalf of others? Like, that would be something. So Jesus is the slayer, but he's the innocent slayer who lays down his life for us. Jesus is the blood redeemer whose purpose is to bring restoration and to cleanse the land and bring justice. Jesus also is the high priest. That at the death of the high priest, do you hear this? This is so cool. This makes the Old Testament just come alive. At the death of the high priest, they say the high priest, when the high priest dies, that somehow the blood of the high priest covers for the guilt of the manslaughter so that they can return home. When the high priest, Jesus, spills his blood, we're welcome home. So cool, so cool. Okay, one last one, Psalm 55. Psalm 55, we're going to just look at verses 16 to 19. And I'll give you the situation. This is King David writing, and so he's king, which means he's a king. And he has a lot of privileges, except he doesn't have any privileges because his son he forms a coup, and he's threatening David's life. And so King David doesn't have access to his money. His palace is seized. King David, who should be in control over here, his army is now working for his son who wants to take over and kill his dad. Woo! The betrayal, the fear, the desperation. Here's somebody who should have all kinds of abilities and access and resource. He is on the run. So what does he say? Verse 16, David says, "But I call upon God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon I utter my complaint and moan, and he will hear my voice." David says, I am desperate. All day, every day, I am crying out. He says, he will redeem me, unharmed, from the battle that I wage. For many are arrayed against me. God, who is enthroned from of old, will hear, and he will humble them, because they do not change and they do not fear God. Here is David, desperate spot. He should be king, and yet he is on the run. He is closed in. And he says, my God will redeem me. All these portraits of redemption. All these portraits. We got redemption in the realm of marriage. We've got redemption in the realm of the courts. And we got redemption in the battlefield, being rescued from our enemies. So last week we talked about redemption as being freed out of slavery, but then it's like the Bible just bursts forth all these ideas for what redemption means for us. And when we say we've been redeemed by God, what we mean is it means all of these. There's so much. We are Ruth, the vulnerable, homeless, poor, needy, who's welcomed into a new home, welcomed and loved in a new family. We are the slayer on the run with somebody coming after us who is set free and brought back home. We are the king without any access to his resources. Ain't that a picture of humanity? that we were made to be kings and queens. We were made to rule and have dominion. But we don't. The tragedy is that we are on the run and we have no access to it. But here God comes and he rescues us out of that and restores us to our rightful place of royalty. We're kings and queens. We should be able to rescue ourselves, but we are unable to. We need a higher authority to rescue us, and that is what God does. So what do we get from these pictures of redemption? Is that it's really multifaceted, and we're not the hero, are we? We're those in need. We are poor, vulnerable, needy. So we got to catch that first. But the other thing we got to catch is that if we are the redeemed, then the redeemed people ought to be a redeeming people. If God wants to show us that he is one who goes after those in most need, then shouldn't we be those who go after those in most need? If God's willing to help the helpless and to help the hopeless and to help even to the point where it hurts, even to the point when it costs, shouldn't we be willing to help to the point where it hurts? So let's consider, who is someone we can help this week? How might we just be a small little reflection of our Redeemer? How can we be a channel, not a sponge? Sponge just receives. A channel passes on. So we've been redeemed, we pass it on to someone else. So right now we just pray, God, would you help us to absorb